Okay there, we're getting to the end. This is the final video on how to succeed in your ministry exam in English as a second language. In the previous videos, I showed you how to write an effective introduction, some good body paragraphs, and a great conclusion. Today, we have two objectives. I want to clarify what's the language repertoire, and I want to give you tips and tricks to improve language. What does language repertoire refer to? Is it a list of different languages? A list of vocabulary used in English? Or the ability to use language mechanics, correct vocabulary, and grammatical structures? If you said the ability to use language mechanics, correct vocabulary, and grammatical structures, you are correct. First of all, I want to make sure that you understand what language repertoire means. Well, it's your ability to use language mechanics, correct vocabulary, grammatical structures in a selected language, in English in this case. The Criterion language repertoire is very important because in the ministry rubric, 25 points out of 50 are allocated to it, which means 50% of your grade is on language. So how do you get 25 on 25? Well, your text contains very few errors, if any, and you're using typical English forms and idioms inside your text. You get a B. So we're talking about 23 or 20. If your text contains some errors, not many, but some. And sometimes it may affect readability, but not comprehension. It means your teacher understands everything easily. A C, which is 18 or 15 out of 25. Well, your teacher needs a little bit more interpretation to understand your text. You're still passing because your teacher understands everything, but it's not as clear. We're talking about a D and an E, so 13, 10, and 8 out of 25, sorry. When you get into a D and an E, your teacher does not really understand. He needs considerable interpretation to understand your sentences. It is not clear. When using a second language, we tend to try to make our sentences as long as we would do in our first language. That can become a problem. So that's why my first tip is about the length of your sentences. Keep them short. It's okay. And if you have trouble formulating your message, go back to the basic subject-verb-object structure. It will help you. And if needed, you can even keep them under 15 words each if possible. That's not a problem. And this brings me to my second point, reformulation. When you're rereading your text, you're trying to correct errors and you see that you're repeating yourself a lot. Well, you have a nice opportunity to improve your text by maybe changing some main verbs inside your sentences. You'll bring more action into your sentences and you'll be more interesting. It's a possibility to reorganize your text a little bit. Maybe add a transition there, maybe a different little complement there. That's okay. It will just add to your text and it will be more interesting. And finally, when you reread, you realize you're using the same vocabulary words all over the place. Well, use synonyms to enrich your text. I mentioned them earlier. Transition words are a must. They are there to help you organize your thoughts, organize your text, to have a very good structure. But we use them in different situations. Let's say you want to put emphasis on a situation. You can say in particular, in fact. If you want to do a contrast, two opposing ideas, well, you're using however, nevertheless. If you want to add to your text inside your paragraph, you could say also this idea. Or you're structuring your arguments first, second, and third. You're adding to it. And if you're making an illustration, for example, such as Well, those transition words are very common, but they help you out. We use them in different situations too. Let's say there's a cause and effect. Because something, or since this happened, that happened. That's good. And obviously when you're doing a conclusion, well, it's good to start with something like in conclusion, to conclude, to sum up. It helps to organize everything. And finally, if you want to persuade or you want to compare things, a lot of different transition words can be used. Be sure to at least add one per paragraph, maybe more if needed. It all depends on the situation. Remember, to get the perfect 25 out of 25 on the ministry rubric for the language repertoire, you need to use typical English forms. And there are a lot of different examples. Today, I just want to show you a few of them. So, phrasal verbs, very common for English. Something like find out, point out, look up, take into account. Little expressions like that that will enrich your text. English idioms, something like bear in mind, rings a bell. This is more illustrative. It's good to enrich your text again. And collocation, words that you put together to add to the meaning of the word, like significant change, newly discovered. Typical English forms are really important inside your text, but you have to watch out. Don't use them all the time. You need to use them in the correct situation to keep it relevant. Even if it sounds extremely logical, my last tip is about language switch. Do not switch to any other language than English. If you're unsure of a word, go back to your paper dictionary, search, take the time. You have the time to make sure that you're not switching languages. Because if you do, it's an automatic D or E on the rubric. You will fail. All right, this is the end of the last video in the series on how to succeed in your final ministry exam in English as a second language. I'm sure all the tips and tricks and all the examples I gave you to prepare for your C1 oral evaluation and for your C3 written evaluation will help you succeed. Don't hesitate to re-watch the different videos to make sure that you are prepared. Good luck!